In this VTM here, what we're going to be doing is taking a look at how we can go about taking the vehicle that Joel and Derek modeled earlier and set it up so that we can use it inside of Unreal Tournament.
Oh, yeah.
Now, that means we've got to do a few things such as give this vehicle a skeleton, believe it or not. And then after giving it a skeleton, we're going to then skin the vehicle to the skeleton. That's the process of binding our geometry to our joints. And, of course, there's a few rules that we're going to kind of stumble on in there. You know, we're going to have to get into a little bit of weighting, and we're going to have to make sure that our joints are rotated appropriately, et cetera, et cetera. And then once all that's done, we'll take a look at how we can export this. And in this case, we're going to be using the Unreal Ed exporter that comes with the PLE in the box, Unreal Tournament 2004.
Makes life a whole lot easier.
So, yeah, it's very, very simple. It's real quick. So this whole VTM is really showing you how to do things with Actor X and with the Unreal Ed plugin. So you're kind of set the best of both worlds, if you will. But once we get it over into the game, you know, we're going to show you how to get the textures put back on it. And then in the next VTM, we'll show you how we can then set up all of the necessary scripts so that we can have this guy operational inside a level.
Totally functional vehicle.
Totally functional. Now, let's see what a totally functional vehicle looks like.
So let's go over to here, switch over to Unreal, and ooh, check it out.
Look at that. There's a vehicle. And he's going to walk up to it, and he's going to jump. Look at him. He's just so cool sitting there. Hey, it's even Zuriel, the character that Zach had done earlier. He's just kind of chilling out behind the wheel, doing some wheelies, driving around.
And it does have the lights in the front.
It has lights in the front.
And check this out. We have little miniguns in the front as well, so we can shoot.
Yeah, that's very cool.
Hey, we can even come out and jump onto the turret back here. So, dink.
Look at that. And yes, two people can be in this vehicle at the same time. And time permitting, we'll see if we can go ahead and set it up so that a passenger can get in there as well. But I think you're going to find that once you see how we can set it up for just a driver and a turret operator, that setting up a passenger is really, really a pretty easy process.
Oh, yeah.
And let's go ahead and talk about this incredibly sexy texture. Okay, as you can tell, it obviously took a lot of time to do it.
Oh, yeah.
Not. Basically, we're out of time. Okay, we were really running tight, and we did not want to miss the opportunity of giving you guys a vehicle tutorial, you know, how to get it all rigged up, set up, and into the game. So, you know, whether we could spend our time on texturing the vehicle, or we could simply throw on just something really fast. Let me move this just so that we can kind of... let's look at something that's not moving, like over there. Or look at the vehicle from the other side in that direction.
All right.
I'm just trying to make sure that the file doesn't end up being too big. Yeah, there we go. Excellent. So anyways, we could have spent our time texturing the vehicle or giving you this video. So obviously this set of videos right here in this VTM is very important to us and hopefully to you as well. So that's what we're going to be taking a look at. And the texture that is on there is set up just so that we can show you how to create the texture package. And then later on when we get into code, how to utilize that texture as well. So when the vehicle spawns, it has the texture. And the textures on the wheels. Zach took a little bit of extra time to put those together just to make Mr. Derek Stevens happy because, well, he really likes skulls a lot. So, so we did get that a little extra. Plus it looked kind of funny having a checkered pattern on there. So, Joel, let's go ahead and jump back over into Maya for a second. And let's talk about how the lessons are going to lay out. Go ahead and select your vehicle.
All right.
So you'll notice when he selects the vehicle, we've got, if he jumps all the way up, we've got all these different pieces in there. The first thing that we're going to want to do is we're going to start separating everything out into different files. I mean, right now we've got this guy and each of the wheels and all that good stuff, and they're set up in a group, as we've already seen inside the vehicle model.
Why not open the outliner just so you
that
can
sounds
see?
good.
So
here we go. We've got the buggy, the turret, and the left and right minigun. But what we need to do is take all of these objects and put them into their own files. And there's a reason for doing that, and you'll see in a few minutes as we get into these lessons why. Actually, the next lesson we'll do it.
Right.
So we'll break everything apart, and then after that we'll start adding in the skeletal system. And when we start putting the skeletal system into play, we need to take into account things such as the suspension, where the wheels are going to rotate from, where the miniguns are going to connect at, where the turret's going to connect. Heck, even the miniguns and the turret have a bone system themselves.
That's right.
So we're going to be looking at all of that good stuff, and then we'll finally get to the skinning and the exporting process of the VTM. So this is just kind of a good overview of what's to come. And so with that, I guess let's go ahead and get started.
All right.
Okay, in this lesson here, what we're going to be doing is setting up our vehicle for the rigging process, and then go ahead and get the initial skeleton, the initial part of the rig into place.
That's right.
So First of all, why would we split this up into various files? Well, let's first do it, and then we'll talk about why we did it, because it'll be a lot easier to see.
Alright, so let's go to the outliner. Just select the turret, and just go up to File, Save Selection, Export Selection, and just call it Turret. So, think we've just saved it out.
And hit the delete key.
And hit the delete key. Then we can select the left minigun. Now, we can delete the right minigun out and just export the left minigun.
Because when we get into code a little bit later on in another VTM, we're going to show you how in the game, basically, we'll be spawning 2 of those objects.
Right, so we can just use 1. And so let's just rename this to minigun. Go up to File, Export Selection, and we'll just call this minigun. And, of course, just delete that out. And we'll go ahead and save this scene as
just the
buggy. And just leave buggy start there. So, that's all the files saved out.
Okay, so let's go ahead and real quickly jump into the other files.
Alright.
And there's one, I just want to show you guys one important thing.
So, let's open the turret.
And so if we do 2 things, if we frame it up and we show the grid. Okay, check this out. The main reason we did this was that we want to take and make sure that the grid, 2 things. One, that the grid is the center point of, well, hang on, let me say this in a different way because this can come across a little confusing. That the turret has its axes at the center base, in other words, down here, which is where it's at the moment, because this is what's going to be attaching to a bone on our vehicle when we spawn this into game.
Right.
And also that this center axis right here, the axis for the turret, is center on the grid.
Right, so what we want to do is come in here and just use our grid snap and move it right to the top of the grid.
So again, let me kind of push the idea here. Let me just get this across. The reason we want to do this is right now this object can kind of be seen as 0, 0, 0. I mean, even though that's not its translate X, Y, and Z numbers, I mean, that is where it's at. It's at the origin of the world. And that way, when we bring this object right here into Unreal at game time, we spawn it in, and we tell it to attach to a bone. It's going to attach directly to that bone with no offset. If we were to move this away from the center of the grid, there would be an offset. So it would spawn away from the point in which we tell it to attach inside the game.
Exactly. So let's go ahead and save this out since we have moved it.
And if we would have left the turret in the scene with the buggy, that would have been kind of funny to have snapped that to the center and been protruding through the buggy.
It would have been kind of weird. So let's go ahead and open the minigun and do the same thing for it. And just say, grab our move tool and snap it right to there. So, hey, very nice. So let's just save that out and open back up our buggy. And this guy is already in the correct location.
Right.
So let's go ahead and grab this buggy. I guess we can go ahead and start boning him up.
Yeah, sounds good.
So let's go into here, and what I like to do is grab all 4 of these wheels, and we need to create the wheel bones in the exact center of these wheels. Otherwise, we'll get a wobbling effect.
That's right. Basically, you can view this kind of as the pivot in which the wheel is going to turn around.
That's right. So an easy way to do this, if we switch over to wireframe, we can grab all 4 of these wheels, go up to Display, and then Component Display, and Selection Handles. So now, if you look inside, we have the exact center of each of the wheels. So we can, create our joints and snap them to these points. So a lot more easy. So let's go to Skeleton with our animation menu set, Skeleton, Joint Tool, and just with Point Snap, Point Snap right to there. And they're a little bit small right now, so what we can do is go to Display, Joint Size, Custom, and you know what, let's turn it up a lot. Something like that.
Yeah, looks good.
So right about to there, and we'll just press Y to re-invoke the tool, Point Snap to this guy, because we want to be creating them separately because their rotations are going to be separate.
That's right, and if he would not have hit Y, it would have stayed with the same operation. So in
right,
other words,
it just continues.
That's right, it would have just continued the skeletal hierarchy.
So let's just press Y again, and press V, snap to there, press Y, V, snap to there. Simple as that. So with that, let's go ahead and press Y and create the root as well. So let's go up to here and rename it to root. So this is going to be our root. And let's just press W and grab this root. Let's just set it to translate X, Y, and Z to 0. So he's at the origin.
That's right.
And what we can do is take all these 4 joints right here and drag them into root. So now they're children of the root.
So let's go ahead and hide our polygons for just a minute inside this viewport.
So we can go into here, hide polygons, and check it out. We've already have a sort of web going on.
Yeah, now what about the rotation of the joints?
Now that is an important thing. If we go to our joint 1, and let's make sure go into our move tool and switch over to object so that we can see the object rotation, where it's pointing anyway. We can come up to here, and what we need this rotating X to be is -90. So we want it to be Y pointing back, Z pointing up, and, well, X pointing out.
Well, that's right, because we're going to be rotating around the X-axis, and let's not forget that over in Unreal, it is a Z-up environment.
That's right. So for all 4 of these joints here, which are all for the wheels, we want the rotating X to be -90. Think, simple as that. So, now an important thing to do is rename these joints. Now, if we turn back our polygons, so show polygons, this is the front left wheel, or left front tire.
Right.
So what we want to do is, now these names can be anything you want, but they need to correspond to the names you use inside of your script. So as long as they're the same as what's in the script, they can be anything you want. And that the convention that we're using is just left front tire. And pretty much the same for all of the other ones. This is going to be left rear tire. This one right here is going to be right front tire. And this one right here is going to be right rear tire. So kind of self-explanatory. Now what we need to do is create the struts. And these are what are going to be used to calculate the suspension by the physics engine. So all they need to be is kind of placed in the position of where the suspension would be calculated. So you can kind of eyeball it, if you will. So I like to take these two. Let's just undo that. Grab these two guys. Press Control-D to duplicate them. Just move them in and move them up a little bit. And what I like to do is just turn on the shaded mode. Grab this guy and just put him in a fairly good position. So something like that. So it calculates the suspension between these 2 points. And then we can grab this guy right here. Move him up. And move him back. Something like that. Now we can do exactly the same thing for the other side and get it pretty much lined up the same way. So we can grab these two right here, duplicate them over, move them out, and maybe switch to a top view. Makes life a little bit easier. So I'll switch over to wireframe and just line it up to about the same position here. So right about like that. Take him right here and move him right back to there. And just make sure in the side view they're lined up about the same. So this guy right here should be moved up to about there. And this guy right here moved up to about there.
And of course naming becomes important here as well.
That's right. If we open our outliner a little bit more and switch over to a perspective view, this is going to be the left front strut. So let's rename this and just change the end to strut. This one right here is going to be right rear strut. No, left rear strut, excuse me. What was I thinking?
That's right. Jordan forgot his left from his right. Yeah.
So this is right front strut. And right rear strut. Think, simple as that. So that's all the bones necessary to get the basic workings of a vehicle.
Now, do you want to talk a little bit about the strut model?
The strut model?
Yeah, it's something that we don't have.
Oh, right. I see what you're saying. All you need, sometimes if you look at the vehicles inside of Unreal 2004, they have certain suspension systems that you have set up. Well, it's very easy. In this vehicle, we didn't really want to put them in.
Yeah, we're just trying to keep the whole demonstration simple.
That's right. But all you need to do is skin your strut system to, say, the strut bone. And what it'll do is calculate the rotations accurately and so on and so forth. So it makes creating a strut system very, very simple if you wanted to go ahead and do that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, you say rotations, you mean translations?
The translations and rotations of the struts.
Your struts is going to spin around?
That's going to rotate around. If you look at, let's take this bone for example, or the right, left, rear. Thank you. It will rotate around this way to calculate this the suspension.
I got you. I see what you're saying.
So that's really simple. And of course, we need to make sure that the left front strut are also rotated -90 so that that's all set up. So all 4 of these are going to have the same rotation as the front tires. So that's pretty cool. Now what we need to do is set up 3 more bones for the 2 miniguns at the front and the turret at the back. Now these are going to have slightly different rotations. So let's create this.
Now, technically, these are, in a sense, spawn points, right?
Right. All that's going to happen is when it's spawned, the turret is going to be attached to this bone.
So, in other words, when the vehicle is spawned into the game, what's going to happen is it's going to cause the turret to become spawned in the game and attached to that point.
Exactly.
Which is interesting. I'm just wanting to point this out because if somebody's making some type of elaborate, huge land-traveling war machine and they wanted to attach turrets all over the place, they could do that simply. They just need to continue following the process we're demonstrating here.
That's
by
right.
having a whole lot of bones brought into the mix.
Right. Already we have the basic structure, the necessary bones to get a working vehicle, but these are for the weapons, etc.
That's right.
So let's create a bone, a joint, or whatever you want to call it, and just move this up into the correct position. And in X, we could just zero it out since we want him to be in the center, and just line this up however you see fit. So right about like that. So it's right in the back. And we can just call this whatever we want. We can say turret, and as long as in the script we refer to it as turret, everything's fine. And we'll come back to the rotation in just a second. We can do exactly the same thing. Just duplicate this guy and put him in a position for the miniguns. Talking, moving all at the same time. You know, it can be hard. So
you're snapping in one direction.
I am, I know. So just take this guy, curve snap him over to here, and duplicate him over.
And he's just holding C to do the little curve snap operation.
Ah, right.
And middle clicking.
And middle clicking. And snapping. And snapping right to about there. I'm liking that. And what we can do is come in here and say, this is going to be gun attachment 1. And naming this, grabbing the name, pasting it over here, gun attachment 2.
Okay.
So now all we need to do is get the rotation set up accurately. So what we need to do is change the rotation in X and Y to -90. And you'll notice what we've just done here is set up basically a Z upworld scenario. So Z is pointing up, X is pointing forward, and Y is pointing out.
That's right.
So this is exact Z world situation. So we can do the same thing for all three of these bones. So take these guys and say -90.
And not setting this up is going to end up putting you in a position where you're just going to become frustrated because you're going to be dealing with weapons that come in and become attached pointing backwards, upside down,
right.
all sorts of different ways if you don't have it set up with the rotations proper.
It's not a pretty situation.
Negative.
So we'll just make sure all three of these are set to -90 in both X and Y, and you know what? That should be everything for setting up and rigging a vehicle. All the rotations are set up accurately, and we've set the correct bones, and we've named them according to the way we want them to be named.
That's right. Okay, so with that, really, that's going to wrap up this lesson on just the basic rigging of our vehicle. Thanks a lot. Okay, in this lesson here, what we're going to do is take a look at how we would go about setting up a rig for our turret. Now, very much like our vehicle there, we need to set up a skeleton inside the turret so that once it gets over into the Unreal game, the Unreal Engine is going to know at what point to tell the turret to yaw around, to pitch around. I mean, all this rotation stuff is obviously very important.
That's right.
And we're going to be deriving these pivot points from locations of joints that we place in there. Do exactly the same thing that we did with our buggy right there.
That's right.
So we need to go ahead and get all this in place, and of course the naming is going to be just as important as it was here in the buggy, because when we get over into the scripts, we're going to be referring to these different joints by their names, which means we are free to name the joints anything we'd like, but we've got our own little naming convention that we're going to be following. Really, it's Epic's naming convention.
Right.
I mean, we may make a couple slight changes here and there, but we're pretty much adhering to one of their scripts just to make life easier. It's just really important to understand that you guys can name it whatever you want.
Exactly.
So let's go ahead and get the turret opened up.
Alright, so go to File, Open Scene, and let's open up turret.mb, which we saved in the last lesson.
Hey, look at that guy.
Hey, fancy. Of course,
very uncomfortable looking seat, but hey.
Hey, that's true, but hey, it's just a simple little turret. It's an example, dude.
I understand.
And if you notice, we don't... Thank you.
Just kidding, alright.
We have the turret here, and of course we don't have any bones.
But there's no joints at all.
So we need to set that up. So let's switch over to a wireframe mode, and let's start creating some joints. So switch to the joint tool. The first one, dink, that's going to be the root. So let's press Y to reselect the tool. This right here is going to be the yaw bone, which is going to control, well, the yaw. Well, simple enough. And of course it's going to be called the rear gun base. Let's press Y. This right here, this bone, this joint, keep saying it wrong.
This is where we're going to be attaching the gunner or the player to, when the player jumps up into the turret. And that's pretty much the location of the head. And we're kind of estimating right now.
Right, we may need to go back and tweak it.
Yeah, tweaking may be required a little later.
That's right. So with that in place, let's press Y, and let's press this guy right about there. This is going to be the pitch for this gun part. Press Y, and this final bone here is going to determine where the fire is going to be shot from.
Right.
Right.
Okay, now the next thing we need to do is make sure that all of our rotations
are set up. Well, let's go ahead and first name them, because, well, it's kind of hard to get the rotations right.
Really?
No, I'm just kidding. It's just me. I like to name them first. So let's go into joint 2. This is going to be the rear gun base. So, rear gun base. This guy right here is going to be the gunner location.
Okay.
And this guy right here is going to be the rear gun
turret.
Rear gun turret.
And finally, something like weapon fire.
So something like that.
Fire. Okay, so now what we want to do is
set up the rotations. If we switch over to a perspective view and turn on the move tool, what we want, of course, while it's in object mode, whatever, we can come into here and make sure this is set up correctly by just changing these to -90, just like we did in the last lesson, so that it's rotated according to a Z-up world.
That's right. And then, again, what he was talking about, like in the last lesson, not everything, because remember, we didn't do that with the vehicles because they needed to rotate around the X-axis, which would have made a very unique problem if we would have had X pointing forward like we do here.
That's right.
But with the gun attachment locations in the buggy, all of them were -90 in X and -90 in Y, so the X pointed forward, Y out to the side, and Z up to match the Unreal's world. Also, take note of the fact that we did not rotate the root.
No, we did not. If you notice, the root is still 0, 0. So, of course, what we can do is, you know what, to make this a little bit simpler, we can just zero out the X, Y, and Z. And let's select rear gun base and just make sure this guy is zeroed out and moved up a little bit. So let's zero him out and just move him up a little bit.
That's just kind of neatening things up a little bit. Now check this out. Obviously we need to build a hierarchy at this point. Let's go ahead and hide our
let's go ahead and show hide our jumper.
And now let's take our joint size and bring it down a little bit. That way we can easily see the difference with the root and the yaw bone right above it.
So something like that.
Yeah, that's good. Now let's start all the way out there with the weapon fire.
Right, so weapon fire.
Shift select that guy.
And PM.
And now,
PM.
Now let's grab both that pitch bone and the gunner location, and then the yaw bone down there.
And press P.
And then finally we can just come over there and middle click, drag, drop there.
And check that out. We have a nice little hierarchy setup going on here.
Okay, and of course let's go ahead real quick and bring our geometry back. Now with the yaw bone selected, here's the important thing. Go ahead, use the rotation tool, and look at this. We're yawing back and forth. That's where the Unreal Engine's going to know to tell this guy to yaw at.
Right.
And then of course when we start dealing with our gun, it's got pitch up and down. Remember, the turning left and right's to right from the base down below.
That's right.
The gun doesn't turn left and right. The poor gunner would be yanked out of the chair.
That would be bad.
Yeah, actually, it would look pretty funny.
Yeah, it would.
We should do that. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, so...
actually, I think with that, that's going to wrap up basically setting up the bone system.
Yes, that's going to conclude this lesson. Thanks. Okay, here comes a very, very fast lesson.
Oh, yeah.
What we need to do now is go ahead and rig up the minigun, which is, well, going to be the same thing as the turret, except for a much smaller skeleton.
Oh, yeah.
Let's get to it.
All right, so let's go to File, Open Scene, and open up our minigun.mb file. Nah, we don't need to save. And let's see. All we need is 3 simple bones. One for the root, one for the rotation, and one for where the weapon's going to be fired. So let's switch to a side view as we did last time. Switch over to wireframe, go to skeleton, joint tool, and place a root joint right there. So dink. So that's going to be our root joint. Press Y and create our. Now let's press Y, dink, put it right there. So this is going to be for the rotation. And press Y one more time and place it right there. That's going to be where it's going to be fired. So if we go into the outliner, let's start naming these guys. This is going to be our root. This right here is going to be our gun rotation.
And gunfire.
And gunfire. And this guy can obviously be just part of him.
No, probably before that.
Yeah,
let's do a little rotation.
Right. Almost forgot. Actually, I did forget. We can come into rotate X and Y and set these both to -90 as we did with the turret. So it's now a Z-up world rotation. And just grab these two guys, put them into this set here, and take gunfire, put them into there. So very, very simple setup here. If you look, you know what? Why don't we go to display, joint size, custom, turn this down just a little bit so you can see what we have here. And turn off our polygons. So all we have is this root bone, the gun rotation, and then finally the gunfire.
And another thing that you may have wanted to have done before parenting everything together would have been perhaps zeroing out the root, though it's not going to make...
It's not going to make too much. We can just come up here.
Too big of a difference.
Right.
Yeah, it's so small.
It doesn't really, you know, yeah.
Just being picky.
Imagine that.
Okay. Well,
so check that out. So
like I said, very, very, very quick lesson.
Yeah, it's very simple. That's a good thing.
Yeah, so there's rigging the minigun. Thanks, everyone. Okay, in this lesson here, what we're going to do is take a look at the process of skinning all of our geometry to their respective skeletons. What do I mean? Well, we need to bind our geometry here, our buggy, to the skeleton that we created in the earlier lesson for the buggy.
That's right, so when we move the skeleton, the skin moves along with it.
The skin or actually the geometry. So the geometry is going to kind of act like skin, and that's where the name skinning came from. And we also need to go ahead and take care of skinning our turret to its skeleton and the minigun to its skeleton as well. So first of all, let's go ahead and talk a little bit about skinning. Skinning is nothing more than the process of binding geometry to a skeleton. But why do we do that? Well, we do it so that when you go in and you move or rotate a joint, it's going to have an effect on the geometry. So the points in here, if we come over here and we select the geometry, all these different vertices are going to receive some sort of influence from some joint, or even from multiple joints, depending upon the type of skinning you've set up. Okay. Now, we do have two types of skinning available inside of Maya, and we can find these by coming up here to the animation menu set, and then across to skin, and then you'll find a menu option called bind skin, and from here we'll find smooth bind and rigid bind. So what's the difference between the two? Well, first of all, with rigid bind, it means that each point down here can only be affected by a maximum of one joint. That's it. That's why it's rigid, because you can't blend between multiple joints. So it's either going to move with one joint or it's not going to move at all. I mean, it has to move with one joint. That's the whole idea. Now, with smooth bind, on the other hand, with smooth bind, what you can have is a single point can be influenced by multiple joints. If you stop looking at the vehicle right now and kind of imagine a character for just a second. With a character, let's say in the shoulder region. The shoulder region, you're going to want a point there to be influenced by, let's say, the shoulder bone and the clavicle bone, because if you move your clavicle bone, that should have a little bit of deformation going on as well. And perhaps even a little bit like the points that go all the way back over the chest area should be affected by the shoulder and by the rib bones up underneath. So that if you were to, let's say, stretch your arm or lift your arm up, you're going to have a little bit of skin stretching take place across your chest. So that's just to kind of give a bit of an example.
Right.
Now we're going to use the smooth bind operation, but then we're going to turn around and make it look like a rigid bind, where we're only going to have influence taking place with each vertex by a single joint.
Yeah.
But this is going to give us the desired effect that we're looking for when we get over into the game. So setting this up is real simple. First of all, it's just a matter of coming down here into the outliner, and we'll select our root, and then we'll go ahead and select the buggy. So in other words, our geometry. So the root and geometry. And then once you've selected them, then it's just a matter of coming up here to skin, bind skin, and selecting which option you want to use. Well, we're going to use smooth bind. Let's go ahead and open up our options and talk about what's going on in here. So right now, bind to complete skeleton. Yeah, we want to go ahead and bind the entire skeleton. If for some reason we added some new joints in and some new geometry in later, or let's say, here's a good example. We have a character, and the character, we added a belt or some piece of new clothing to the character after he's already been boned and skinned. Well, we don't want to go in at that point and take, let's say, this new belt and skin it into the entire skeleton. We may want to select just the root bone or one of the lower back bones and the belt, and then say bind to selected joints as opposed to the whole thing. But in this case, complete skeleton is going to work. Now, bind method. We've got two different ones to choose from. We've got closest joint and closest distance. What closest joint is going to allow us to do is when Maya goes to calculate which influence is going to, or which joint is going to influence a particular point, it's going to respect the hierarchy. So in other words, we've got a joint right here in the left front tire, if you'll remember. We have another joint that's real close to it right up here for the left front strut. Let's move this out of the way. We also have a joint way back here called root. Well, with the bind method set to closest joint, believe it or not, with a drop-off rate of 4, what's going to happen is we're not going to see any influence on any of these tire vertices right here from the strut joint. But we will see influence from way back here from the root. That's because we have a fall-off rate of 4. That's how quick we're going to fall off. The higher the number, the quicker you're going to fall off, and then stop searching for joints to influence a particular vertex. But let's say we're working with this vertex. So as it starts to drop off, it's going to say, well, there is a joint real close right here, so let's give it some percentage of influence. And then we have to follow the hierarchy, which means we have to go all the way back here to the root. And by the time we get here to the root with a fall-off rate of 4, we're still not going to have fallen off all the way. So we'll get a little bit of influence from this guy as well. So when we select the root afterwards, we'll see that it is indeed affecting the tire. But then we're going to keep traveling as we continue to fall off. We're going to keep traveling out towards the strut, and we're not going to make it all the way out to the strut. By that time, we've completely fallen off or dropped off all of the influence looking ability. In other words, we're not going to look for anybody else to influence, and we're going to stop. So we'll get influence from these two guys. If we were to come in here and take in our drop-off rate and set it down to something like 1 or 0.5, then the strut would also be affecting the tire here. So closest joint simply means that when the binding operation takes place, it's going to respect the hierarchy. And again, if we relate this back to a character real quick, think about this. Think about a character's fingers. The importance of this is when you were, let's say the tip of the finger is getting skinned, you wouldn't want the vertices at the tip of the finger to receive influence from the joints in the two fingers next to it as well.
Right.
And by respecting the hierarchy, that means you'd have to go all the way up the finger, then around and all the way back down another finger to see if there would be any influence added to that particular joint. And by that time, generally, you would have already dropped off. So that keeps you from getting like a bubblegum type effect. The other one is closest distance, and if we set this to closest distance, then we will get influence from the strut and from the root, because it doesn't care about the hierarchy. It's just looking for what joints are close before we fall all the way off. But generally, you're going to want to respect the hierarchy. Maximum influence, how many joints can affect a single vertex. And right now, we've got it set up to 5. But the drop-off rate's going to control how many joints will actually reach. All because it's set to 5 doesn't mean 5 joints will always be involved with influencing a single vertex.
Right.
Our drop-off rate's going to, like I said, control that. So at this point, all we need to do, since everything is set up, I'm just going to go with the defaults here, is hit bind skin. Bink, ding, 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 and all is done. And if you take a look over here, we've got a series of skin clusters that have been created that simply hold it's a map, if you will, of all the vertices, and each vertex is influenced by which joints and how much influence is going on. So don't forget, a single point that's being influenced with the smooth skin operation could be influenced by a joint down here and a joint way over here. It has to add up to 100% influence in the end. The all influence must be accounted for. This means that if I come in here and I start doing what's called weighting, shifting my weights around, what's going to happen is Maya will start automatically readjusting weights for us, okay? And we're about to see that in just a second. As a matter of fact, if we go ahead and open up and come in here, let's make this a little bit larger, and grab our left front tire right now, and grab our rotate tool. So this is going to be the joint that's going to get rotated by the Unreal Engine based off of our script.
Right, when we want it to start turning.
So let's say first just rotating. So it's going to rotate around like such. Look at this.
Whoa.
There's influence coming from that joint over on other geometry. Look at the lights up at the top. Look at part of the stairs. And then, heaven forbid, take a look at the fender as well. So you can see influence, definitely a bad thing there. So that needs to be fixed. Also, if you turn your vehicle. Now, what's interesting is you can take this in the game, just like this. And it almost looks like
it looks scary.
The car almost looks kind of like a cartoon type car.
Yeah, kind of an organic car.
It's like flop, 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 and the whole thing's just flop, 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 flop. You get the idea. So the skinning needs to be corrected right now. We need to say that this joint right here only has 100% influence on this tire. This joint back here, 100% influence there. So we need to set up all of our 4 joints, and then we need to take the root and tell the root that the root needs 100% influence on just the body.
Right.
That's all. So that's what we're going for. And then there's a couple of ways of doing the weighting. We could go ahead and come up, if we wanted to, if we were to, let's say, come in here, right-click, and select a vertex, okay? We could always come up to Window, come down to General Editors, and we can come over to the Component Editor. And then from inside the Component Editor, we can come over here to Smooth Skin. And check this out. In fact, we'll go ahead and stretch this all the way up. If you remember, well, right now we're looking at every single joint, and at the very end we see a total. So we have a total of 100%. We can see that this vertex way down here is receiving 67% influence from the root, 0.001 influence from the right rear tire, coming all the way back over here, 0.13 influence from the right front tire. But now there's a bunch of zeros in here as well. So one thing we could do is to clean up our component editor by coming up to List and coming down and turning off the Show All Columns. And that will only show us the joints that are influencing this particular point.
And there happens to be
check
5.
This out. There's 5 of them. How convenient. And the total is always at 100%. So if I came in here and made an adjustment to any of these, which I can do at this point, what's going to happen is Maya is going to come behind me and readjust all the other ones so that the total is 100%. Now, in this particular case, you know, we've got all these weights shared all over the place, and to go in here and start dealing with all of these numbers like this, I mean, if we want to, let's go ahead and come down here and maybe select a few vertices. So look at this, a few vertices, all the different influence. Man, what a pain.
Oh, yeah.
Fortunately for us, if we want, we can go ahead and come out of here. Let's grab our buggy. We can come up here, come to Skin, come down to Edit Smooth Skin, and we have a Paint Skin Weights tool. And we can go ahead and open up the options here. And now from inside here, we can see, over here on the right-hand side, we can select which joint, which influence object. Like, let's say right now we've got root selected, and you can see what all the root is affecting. And what's going on here is we have color coding in place, and this color coding is quite simple to understand. Basically, any color that's black. Let's see if I can give a good example. Select the the left rear tire. So left rear tire back here, but the front's all pretty much black, right?
Right.
That means that the left rear tire joint way back here has no influence whatsoever going on over here.
Right, that makes sense.
That makes sense. So black means 0 influence. White, perfect white, is 100% influence, and any shade of gray in between is going to just give you an idea of what type of influence. In other words, if it's a dark gray, it's very little, like it's kind of a real dark gray back over here. And if it's and then we don't have anything that's really white here. But if it's as it gets brighter and brighter white, it's more and more towards 100% type influence. So what we need to do is simply go through here and start setting up all of our skinning. So it's not a really bad thing. At the moment using this tool, you'll notice that we can go over here and we get a brush that we can use and we can paint on these objects over here. So it's really a matter of selecting which object you would like to have effect over here and then start painting away. Well, check this out. If I was to open up my buggy right now, and let's come in here and grab just our dune buggy itself. Okay, actually, you know what? Dune buggy, we have steering wheel, we have all of these different guys. So let's go ahead and grab this guy, this guy, this guy. Let's see, our lights, our bars, our other bars, our small bars, everything except for the tires, right? And then if we were to come down here to root, right, now you can see there's still some shades of gray in there, but
right,
all of these guys need to receive 100% from our root. So we could come down here to paint weights, and as opposed to going in here and starting to paint like we can, we could, but instead we'll set the paint operation to replace. We want 100% to be applied, and we want to say flood. Notice how that just went solid white.
Yeah.
Okay, so that just made things a little bit easier. But now, what's happening with, like, check this out. Well, what about the left front, let's see, left front tire. Okay, so we select left front tire, and if we come and grab the entire thing right now, look at this. Remember how earlier, as a matter of fact, go ahead and zoom in a little bit closer, Joel. We're kind of swapping back and forth with the mouse. Remember how earlier, when I selected the left front tire, we saw shades of gray going on over here? Now there's no shades of gray
right,
at
it's completely
all.
Black.
That's because we took all of these weights, gave it 100%, or all these vertices gave it 100% weight based off of the root back there, which meant that Maya I had to take out all influence coming from this joint in here on the tire. So in this case, with the left front tire, I could just come on down here and say, you know, with the left front tire, there it is, that guy right there, we're going to replace 100% on that guy and flood it. So now he receives 100% influence. And then we could go ahead and say, you know, the left rear tire, and come over here and say left rear tire, and go ahead and flood him with 100%. And then we could say, let's say the right front tire, and then come up here and look for the right front tire, just making sure everything matches, flood 100%. The right rear tire back here, and then the right rear tire right there, and flood it. Now, if we go ahead and zoom back out a little bit and grab our left front tire joint, that's right, and then our rotate tool, check this out. So now it can turn without affecting the geometry of the body, and it can rotate around the x-axis, which is required over in Unreal for everything to work right. Hey, all right.
Hey, nice.
So that's looking pretty good.
Yeah, it is looking pretty good. Actually, that is pretty much all you need to do. I mean, we can come in here. Let's open back up the outliner and just kind of push this over a little bit. And let's switch over to our channel. And let's just select a few of these to make sure that everything is right. And check that out. It's looking really good. If we select our right front tire, just rotate around. That's looking good. Right rear tire. And that's looking good. So,
and it is a good idea to do what Joel just did, because there's nothing more frustrating than to have messed up your skinning, not realize it, export it out over into Unreal, take your time to set up your code and everything, only to get into the game to find out that the whole thing looks blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, make it a point to just test it. It takes 2 seconds.
And of course, if we select the root and we move this guy, of course the whole thing is going to come with us.
So that's very nice. Okay, so we can really go ahead and save this one.
All right, so let's save it out.
Good. Now let's get the turret in place.
All right, so let's just go to Recent Files and open up Turret. So look at that. So we already have this pretty much set up. Now this is easy. All we need to do is switch over to wireframe for just a second.
Let's see if our viewers can guess what we need to do. Hang on. You're absolutely right.
Exactly right.
They said to select the root and select the turret. Man, that's amazing.
Yes, I'm surprised. I'm impressed.
Yeah.
So smooth bind, and now what we want to do.
Let's test it.
Is
grab
test
our yaw bone.
We can grab our yaw bone and check this out. Ooh.
Look at the twisting that you're getting at the base of the gun.
Yeah, definitely not good. Plus, if we select our
pitch up there,
rear gun turret right here.
Ooh, look at the chair! Isn't that too cool?
That is weird.
Yeah, that's very weird.
So what we want to do is select our turret, go to our paint skin weights, and let's just double click this to get its options here. And what we want is for the rear gun base we can have him have full influence on all of it.
So yeah, to start out the whole thing.
Right, so dink, so now it's all white. Now what we want to do is select the rear gun turret. So this bone right here, if we switch over to wireframe temporarily, this bone right here, we want him to have full influence over just this gun. So with the gun, the bone selected over here, we can come over to turret, and not very good naming, but we can select him. And notice it's completely black right now.
Because we gave all influence over there to that yaw bone.
That's right. So with this selected, with Polysurface 7 selected, come over to Flood. Now, if we come over here to Rear Gun Base and start rotating, that's looking good. And if we come over to Rear Gun Turret and start
pitch.
Hey, very, very nice.
Very good.
Actually, that's all there is to setting up the skinning for our turret.
So we go ahead and save that one.
So we save this guy out.
And the minigun.
And the minigun. This one's going to be hard. Do you think you can handle it?
I don't know. Kind of scared.
Okay. And of course, same thing. Select the root. Select the minigun.
Wow, you're getting good.
Hey, I try. Go to Skin, Bind Skin, and say Smooth Bind. So now if we come over to our root and rotate him, he's getting full influence. Or so it seems anyway. So we can, to make double sure, yeah, this is getting partial influence, as you can see.
Yeah.
Definitely a bad thing. So selecting the minigun, come over to our edit skins here, and check this out. With our gunfire, he's getting a little bit of influence. Gun rotation's getting a lot of influence, and root is getting part of that as well. So that's not what we want. What we want is to come to gun rotation. Now this is going to be really hard, so,
Flood.
Dink. We're done.
Now, by the way, you'll notice how we've been leaving the roots out of these attachment objects, the turret and the minigun. And, well, that's kind of important. They are just for the attaching purposes. The things that are going to be rotating are the bones right above it that's placed almost in the same position as the root.
That's right. So, I mean, if you look, we can select this right here, the gun rotation, and, woo, perfect rotation. Right. And pitch, very nice.
Okay.
So, of course, that's going to wrap it up.
So let's go ahead and save this one out real quick.
So we can save him out. And you know what? Let's just switch over to 6 so we can see our nice little textured pattern.
And with that, that's going to wrap up this lesson. And in the next lesson, we're going to take a look at how we can export all this out to Unreal Ed and start creating the necessary package that's going to contain all of these objects. So that's going to wrap up this lesson. Thanks. Okay, in this lesson here, what we're going to do is simply take all of the objects that we've put together in Maya and all these different files and export them over into Unreal Ed in their own package so that it's set up and ready to start being used. Of course, there's some code that needs to be in place as well, so it's not like we're going to have a complete running vehicle once we export, but this process is, of course, required just to get all of these objects into the Unreal environment.
That's right. So let's go ahead and get started. The first thing that you're going to need, if we open our outliner and select our root here, what we're going to need for this Unreal exporter to work properly is to create a character set. So we can come up to Character, Create Character Set, and we do have a VTM on creating character sets.
That's right. If you watch the Introduction to Animation with Maya VTM, we have a whole lesson dedicated to character sets and what they are. But in this particular case, the Unreal Ed Export plugin requires you to have a character set. You got to have it.
That's right. So let's just name this character set Buggy, and we can just leave that as default and say Create Character Set. So now if you look down here, we have Buggy 1 as the character set. So with the root selected, we can come up to Skeletal Mesh Export window, click that, give it a few seconds, and check this out. We have a nice little window where we can export things from. The name, I want him to be Buggy, and the package that I wanted to create him in. I'm going to say create a new package, and we get this little dialog, and we're going to say this one's going to be ONS Onslaught Dune Buggy. So that's the name. Press OK, and down here we have a new package here, ONS Dune Buggy. So with this selected, and we'll say underscore to space to make sure that it is converting underscores to spaces. And we can say export. And wait a second. And notice down here it says result export complete. So if we come over to Unreal Level Editor and switch over to ONS Dune Buggy, ooh,
is a Dune Buggy now in the Unreal environment with an incredible, sexy-looking Swamp Thing texture.
Oh yeah,
the default texture if nothing is applied.
Yes,
and the bones.
The bones. This is very, very cool. If you look in here, everything is set up properly. X is pointing out for the rotations.
For your tires, for your miniguns, X is pointing forward.
Yep, everything
is always pointing up.
And
you
of
can
course,
even check
for
the names.
Look at this.
Hey.
Gun attachment 1 and 2, left front tire, left front strut, etc., etc. Everything's cool. So let's get that done. One more thing we're going to need to set up, however. If you go to View, Collision, right now you're not going to see any collisions because we haven't set any up.
And boy, this is important.
This is very, very important. Otherwise, your vehicle will never move. So if we go to the collision over here, under collision boxes, we'll say add. So now we're going to add a collision box. And block all of these, block karma, block non-zero, and block non-zero, and block zero extent. We'll set all to 1 so that it's colliding with everything.
So it's players' projectiles.
Right. And with bone name, we'll set this to root. So this is the root bone where it's going to be based off of. And if we go to radii, we're going to need to set up the correct radii. And the best way to do this, if we come over into Maya, and we'll just exit this out, we've already done it, is to create a box inside of here and then determine where the collision box can be. So we can go to Create, Polygon Primitives, Cube, and we can just scale this up, and we get, of course, that funky texture.
That's all good.
So we could just change this over to that. And if we stretch this out, we want it to be covering the entire thing. So if we switch over into wireframe.
Entire body.
Entire body. Not the entire thing, just the entire body. And something like that, maybe a little bit more. And the top, it doesn't have to go all the way to the top, so something like that. So if we look over here, I mean, this can be about 200. We're just kind of rounding it off to make it easier. Maybe 80.
And 400.
Yeah, maybe 400.
And since we're dealing with radii numbers over inside of Unreal Ed, we need to take this and go and
divide all of these by
2.
Right.
Yeah.
So 100, 40, and 200. So if we come back into Unreal Level Editor, Unreal Ed, we want to change this to 100, 40, not 400, 40, and 200. So look at that.
Ta-da!
Hey, very, very nice. So it's just a simple way to do that.
Yes, absolutely.
So while we're in here, let's go ahead and press save, and it's going to save it as onsdunebuggy.ukx. That's cool.
So I just saved our package out.
So now it's saved. So now what we need to do is come back over into Maya and save out for our turret and our minigun. So let's go into File, Recent Files, and just load up our turret. And yes, we do want to save this. So we save that out and do exactly the same thing we did in the last one. Open our outliner, select our root, go into character, create character set, and of course Buggy's going to be still here. That's all good. Change this over to turret, say create character set, and we can come into here with the root selected, go to skeletal mesh export, and change this name to turret. And now you'll notice the ONS Dune Buggy is already there since we've already created it.
So we don't need to create a new package.
Right. So dink, underscore to space, export,
and
export
look at the
complete,
bottom.
And come over to Unreal Ed and check this out. Right under here we now have a turret.
How cool is that?
Yeah. So if we come into here, everything, we do not need to set up collision boxes for this guy. So that's already set up. So very nice. So we can come back into Maya, exit this guy out, and what's really amazing is how very simple this whole process is. It's kind of...
Well, this plugin just makes life a breeze.
Oh, yes it does. If we come over to here, select the root, go into character, character set, come into here, call this minigun, create character set, with it minigun, we come over here, skeletal mesh, it's named minigun, select our package, it's ONS Dune Buggy, underscore to space, export. Give it a second, export is complete. Done. So we can come over to Unreal Ed, check this out. We now have minigun as well, and it's at the origin. The naming is set to gunfire, gun rotation, and root. If we come to turret, we have rear gun base, rear gun turret, gunner location, weapon fire. Everything's looking, well, perfect.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's just save this guy out. So press save, overwrite it.
And that's it.
That's it.
Bringing all of our geometry over. In the next lesson, it'll be quick. We'll bring in our textures and create a package out of that. And man, are we going to be about finished?
Oh, yeah.
All right, so that's going to wrap up this lesson here. Thanks. Okay, in this lesson here, what we need to do is go ahead and bring our textures in. I mean, all the way up to this point, what we've done is we've got our vehicle now boned up, skinned, and exported over into Unreal Ed and establishing a package along with the turret and the minigun. Now all we need to do is make a package out of our texture, or textures, but in this case it's just a single texture, and then apply that texture over to the stuff, and we're done.
Yep, that's right.
Let's do it.
So let's go into here, File, in our texture browser, of course, File, Import, and we want DuneTexture.tga, and we just press Open, and the group, we'll just leave that empty, and the package name, we'll just call this Dune Buggy Text, and name Dune Texture. Very nice. So let's just press OK, leave all the rest as default. Give it a second, and there we have our fancy texture.
So we can go ahead and save our package on now, so that the package has been saved to the textures folder.
Right, so DuneBuggyText.utx, and we can come over to animations and just quickly come into skin, material, and just, well, say use. Dink. And look at that. Ooh,
yeah, that's
fancy.
About it. Yes.
And we can come into turret and do the same thing. So use, come into minigun, and say use. And you know what? Come in here, save it
out.
And that is it.
And interestingly enough, all because you assign the texture right here inside the animations browser does not mean that you're going to see this texture when you bring the vehicle into the game.
No.
It's something that we're going to have to set through code. So really, this wraps everything up. So let's go ahead, Joel, and in this lesson we'll treat it as a conclusion, and we'll go ahead and do a quick overview of the entire process.
Sounds good.
So all the way back into modeling VTM, Joel and Derek took you on a wild ride of modeling this guy.
Woohoo!
They put it all together for you and showed you how to get the image planes or how to use them as references for constructing the model and modeled it. And then from that point, we took this VTM and we showed you what's required for this to become a functional vehicle inside the Unreal environment by introducing you to the skeletal systems that were required. So we placed all the joints in there and we talked about the joints that were necessary. We also talked about how the naming was not a required thing. You could use your own, but you have to keep the naming in mind so that you make sure that in the scripts the naming is used properly. Otherwise, you're going to run into some problems. And then after we set up, in this particular case, the skeleton system for our vehicle, including the struts and all that, then we went over and we set one up for the turret and one for the minigun as well. Then after that, we proceeded into a little skidding, and we talked about the overview of what skidding's all about. We smooth bound all three objects to their respective skeletons, and then we went in and talked about weighting a little bit and did some weighting because, well, it's very important so that we don't get... See if I bring some flashbacks here. Flubbity, 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 flub. We don't want that. So we went ahead and took care of that. So once the skidding was all in place, we then used the new Unreal Ed export utility that comes with Maya PLE.
It makes life so much easier,
and
doesn't it?
It does make life easy. It's fast, fast, fast. And with that, we went ahead and we exported out our boned and skinned vehicle, turret, and minigun, each to their own, I guess you could say, object inside the ONS Dune Buggy package, and save that. And then finally, oh yeah, well, let's not forget, we had to make the collision box as well, where we used Maya to help determine what the collision box size was. Without a collision box, your vehicle will never move inside of Unreal. And then you won't get an error or nothing. It just won't move. It won't do anything. And then after that, we brought in a texture. We saved the texture out into its own texture package and applied it here, and here we are. Pretty much going to wrap up this VTM. So the whole idea of this VTM was just to show you how to get everything over into the Unreal Ed environment ready to rock and roll. So in the next VTM, we'll start taking a look at all the coding that's required to make this functional in-game. And with that, that's going to conclude this VTM. Thanks a lot, everyone.